Alright, now that we know a little bit about proxy modeling, let's go ahead and do a technique what they call box modeling. That's basically kind of taking some more advanced tools and pushing this design further a little bit. So the first thing I've got is these different groups that you see here, and if I take the truck I can rearrange it and kind of middle mouse drag and pull it down here so the cameras sit on top and we've got our truck. What I could do is take this truck and hit Control G to group it, and again that's under Edit and we do Group, and let's call this Geo like this. I like to take everything that I'm making geometry wise and just kind of put it in a folder like that. And now that we've got this truck, we can duplicate it, hit Control D, or we can go Edit and Duplicate, and then let's call this first truck underscore proxy at the end of it, and then this let's do truck underscore box model. Okay, so we can go ahead and actually hide this top truck. What we could do is come up here and go to display, and we can do show or hide. We hide selection, or we can show selection within here. Notice the hotkeys for this is if you hide a selection it's Control H, and if you show a selection it's Shift H. So that's one way of hiding things. The other way is if you look over here in the channel box, down at the very bottom you should see a layers tab, and anything that you have selected, if you go ahead and hit this button that you see right here, it says, if you look at the bottom left hand corner down here, it'll give you the tooltip and it says create a new layer and assign selected objects. So let's go ahead and just click this here, and we can call this double click and call it truck, and we'll do proxy, and let's put an underscore layer at the end of it. Now we're putting an underscore layer because Maya doesn't really like it when things are named exactly the same. You'll find that quite often. So I'll go ahead and hit save for that, and I can turn the visibility of that off right and through there. Now I could take this truck box model. I'll double click this just so I can copy the text from this, because I know I'm going to kind of use it in just a second here. Let's go ahead and click this button right here, and let's give it a new name, and let's go ahead and paste it right in front of here, put an underscore and then say layer, delete that, hit enter and hit save. So now we should have a proxy version, and let's see if we are selecting that right. You can see if we select it, it's actually kind of highlighting which group that this is in, so it shows us that we're in that correct group. If we hide the proxy version and show the box modeling one, if we select it now, you can see that it's showing that we have that piece selected within here, and we've got the body selected. And let's open up the wheel, because it looks like I accidentally selected the wheels. I just select that, so it's showing you which things are actually selected in here. Okay, now that we can show and hide these different pieces pretty easily, let's go ahead and start doing a little bit more operations on this and making it look a little bit more complex. So I do know if I select all the edges on through here, we can do an operation called a bevel, and that'll put a nice kind of rounding effect in through here. So let's right click on the object and say edge like this. Now I could go through and I could select on both sides, but it is possible that we could turn symmetry on. So if we double click on any of the move tools, you can come here and you can see the symmetry settings, and we can say symmetry, and we can either use object, which is going to be in the object space, or we can use world, which is in the world space. Now this truck actually sits in the center of the world space, so we can just use that, and you can see if I come through and I select these edges like this, it's going to be real easy for me to select these pieces. So I'm going to keep going through here like this. I'm going to click these back pieces like this. Notice I'm not selecting these inner pieces because I don't want those to be beveled. I'll select this here, here, and here, and then now I'm going to go ahead and shift, right click, and I'm going to say bevel edge, and I'm going to hit apply right here like that. So we've got some options on here. You can see how big that bevel is on the fraction. If we put that down to 0.1, something like that, that's going to look a little bit better. Segments are set to 1 right now. If we put that to something like 3, you can see it's going to add more geometry in through there. Maybe if we did something like 4, we've got some kind of rounding that's happening like this. And then let's go ahead and just let go. Deselect anything by clicking in the viewport and not having selected. You can hit F8, and that should put you in object mode. You might have to select the object. If not, you can right click and say object mode like that. And now if we deselect, you can kind of see what's going on. If we turn off the wireframe on shaded, now you can kind of see what's happening with that beveling effect that we've got going on there. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the wheels. Let's hit F10 or right click and say edge and double click on here just like this, and then shift right click and say bevel edge, and then on the fraction 0.25, or let's try 0.2. I don't know, that's still pretty big, so 0.1. Maybe we do something like that, and if we accidentally select off of it, we can always go back to the channel box over here and kind of change some of the values that you see within here. So I'm going to put the segments on something like 3, and now we've got some nice kind of a rounding effect on here. Now I know I kind of want my wheels to all look the same, so anything that I do to this one, I'm going to just duplicate it over, so I'm not going to be worried about the other ones just quite yet. I'll hit F10, double click this, and then shift right click and say bevel edge again, and then I'll do 0.1 and then segments 3, something like that. Okay, the next thing I can do is we're gonna go select this vert that's right here in the center. Now I'm ultimately wanting to select all these faces. I do want to show you a little technique that we can transform, or we can convert some selection type into another type. So I've got this vertice selected, and if I convert this vertice selection into faces, since this vertice touches all the faces within here, I can grab them all at the same time. Now, if you know the hotkeys are F9 for verts, F10 for edges, and F11 for faces. F12 is UVs, but that's getting a little bit more advanced. So if I hit F11, that's just going to switch to this face mode. If I switch back to hitting F9, it's in this vertex mode. So here's a cool little modifier that you can do. You can hold down Control and you can click F11. So I'm basically telling it to convert this vert into a face selection mode. So Control F11, and then I've selected these different faces in here. So now I can hold down Shift and right click and say extrude face. And what I've got within here is an offset, and if I hold down Control, I can kind of drag this in just a little bit like this, and that feels pretty good. If you tap G, you can do your last command that you had, and so basically I've done another extrusion command, and I can take this and I can just kind of push it within here. Now if I tap G again, then I can push this in, if I push G, I can push this in just a little bit further and through here, and then I'm going to hit F8 and just go into object mode. Remember what I was telling you about history, and history builds up in Maya. Maya doesn't do the best with history, and this can cause problems. So what I'm going to do is go up to edit, delete by type, and then do history. Take a note of the hotkey for that because you're going to want to use it quite a bit. Alt-Shift-D. All right, so now that we've got this kind of shape, I think this is looking pretty cool. If we open this up, we've got this wheel front and we got this wheel back. So I'm just going to duplicate it. I'm going to hit Control D and I'm going to put it on the move tool, tap W, and then now I'm going to move it right here. What I can do is, because if we turn on the wireframe on shaded, you can see that I could snap this wheel right to the center of the other one. So if I hold down V, I can just snap it right here to the center. Then I can select the old wheel and delete it. And now I'll call this front wheel, or wheel front, and I'm going to call this back. And I'm going to get rid of this little one at the end. And now we've got our two tires. Okay. So if you remember what we did before, let's get rid of the other side, the whole grouping of that. And we can take these tires that we have, and we're going to go ahead and say edit, duplicate, special. I'm going to do the option box for this. So here's what I'm going to show you. We can duplicate this as a copy like we normally would. Group under parent is going to be fine. But if you remember, we gave it a negative scale in X. We can go ahead and just say -1 right here. And then we're going to hit duplicate special. And it should mirror this across for us, just like what we've got here. Okay, and then now we can call this wheels right, like that. Okay, let's open this up, right click, and just double click and type R, and then R for this. And you can see now we've got our kind of wheels back to where they're at before. I think there's some other kind of cool things that we could potentially do with this. So I'm going to introduce you to a tool. If we select this as an object, you can right click on it and say object mode or select it. If you shift right click, you're going to get this menu. Okay. And what we've got here is this thing called the Multicut tool. If we go to that, we can take an edge, and let's start from down here. And this tool, for whatever reason, kind of has a little bit of trouble whenever there is symmetry on. So I'm going to go double click this and then go to symmetry, and I'm going to turn this off like that. So now I'm going to just kind of work right here. The way this tool works, it's right here again. I can click and drag this along here. If you hold down shift, you can actually snap to different verts here. And then I can click and drag out here. If I hold down shift, it should give me a nice parallel kind of cut that we have right here. And I'm going to click and drag here, holding down shift. And then I want to grab here and hold shift. And then I want to click and drag here like that. And I'm going to hold down shift as I drag here, and then click and drag here like that. The next thing I want to do, I'm going to come right in through here, maybe right about this area. And I'm going to hold down shift as I do this and kind of drag straight across there. I'm going to click and drag, hold shift here, and then I'm going to drag straight up from here. It's possible I can come to this edge right here. It's kind of having just a little bit of trouble. So sometimes if it has trouble, I'll just hit enter and it'll finish that out. Now I can always click and drag this edge right to here. Let's click and drag this out. I'm gonna hit backspace on that. It just seems like it's kind of having some trouble going from that edge to this edge. And so I'm gonna drag right in through here and just hit enter. I think it's because of the odd shape of this polygon here, but shouldn't be that big of a deal. We'll click and drag here, hold down shift, and then click and drag right here like that. And then now we've got something for the top of this. I'm going to want to have something right around in here, and I'm going to click and drag out. Now there is a control shift. If you do that, it does this nice little tool for you that gives you this thing where it's going to make it go straight across for you. So that comes in pretty handy. I'm gonna hit enter real quick just to make that. I'm just wondering if that's gonna cause any kind of issue kind of coming around here off to the side like this. And then I'm gonna click and I'm gonna drag out to here and hold down shift. Let me hit undo for that. I'm just gonna click and drag right in through here, and doesn't want me to use that tool right there. So we've got something like this. I think that's pretty good. Basically, what I was trying to do is get something going for the shape of these windows. So now if we select this face, hit F11 or right click on here and say face, we can select this face, and let's go ahead and shift right click and say extrude face. And then we'll go ahead and we could push this thing in this way like that, or we could use the thickness and push it in just a little bit right here with the thickness like that. And now what we've got our object. Let's delete the history. Remember the hotkey for that, Alt Shift D. We're gonna go edit, delete by type, history. I've got this ability to take this model, and then I can say mesh, and then I can mirror this. Let's do the option box for this. So we can take this and mirror this across the x-axis, and currently you see this is the side that I want to keep, and I want to mirror it across there. So this is a positive x, and I want to push it across the negative x. So I'm going to tell it to mirror across the x-axis, and the mirror direction is a negative x, just like that. We're telling it to merge and combine together with the other side. The merge threshold, you might put it at a really low number like what you see here, and then that might give you better options for actually mirroring some of this stuff across like that. So I'm going to hit F11 right here, and then I'm just going to extrude the faces in on this a little bit. And let me show you something. This kind of annoys me. Sometimes I don't know why Maya has this problem, but the manipulator that you see here gets smaller. So if that ever happens to you, let's go to Windows, Setting, Preferences, and go to Preferences. And if we take a look, there should be something in here for manipulators. And it's right here, and you can see the global scale is put down. I usually like to have that at 2 right there like that, and I'm going to say edit, save settings, and we'll save it down here actually. So we've got this kind of pulled in, and the next thing I want to do is build the bed of the truck. So I'm going to shift right click and say face, or I can hit F11, either way. Select these, shift right click and say extrude face, and I'm going to pull these down right here. I'm not going to go too far down because we got the wheel well, so I'm just going to just kind of leave it like that and hit F8 to go into object mode, and then let's close these things down, and then let's take a look at what we've made and kind of evaluate. I'm going to turn off the wireframe on shaded just so you can kind of see it. And if you're concerned that you're not symmetrical at any point, you can select this. I'm just going to delete history, Alt Shift D, and then we're going to do another mesh mirror like that. And that should get everything nice and symmetrical. The last thing we could do is maybe use the multi-cut tool. I want to show you this shift right click multi-cut tool, and this is kind of interesting. If we go to the side view, we tap spacebar to go out of here, and we can tap spacebar to go in here. You can actually take this tool, click and drag it straight across. If you hold down shift, it makes a nice straight line. So I'm just basically trying to slice all the way through this object. So actually what's going on with this tool right now, why it's not working, is the faces for the window were selected like this, and it thinks that it just should slice through whatever is selected on there. I guess that makes a little bit of sense, but if you don't know that, then it could be a problem. So if that happens to you, just deselect any of the faces, put it on the move tool, and we can click and drag and then hold down shift and then slice directly across. So now we've got something that gives us geometry that maybe we could take this face and maybe this face and this face, and then shift right click and do an extrusion on it and just kind of pull this out just a little bit. So then that gives us a front bumper and a back bumper. I think it's been pulled out a little bit too much. I'm going to actually, instead of using this manipulator, I'm going to use the thickness on this and just kind of pull that out just a little bit like that. And then delete the history, Alt Shift D, like that. And now we've got a nice looking truck that's got more kind of detail on it through the use of box modeling.